You are my professional teacher.
You are my role model in and outside of the classroom.
Cursing at us doesn't motivate us.
I know if you care about me. I know if you don't.
Don't make fun of me.
Your decisions and dispositions affect me.
Impact my life.
Do not text me things that you wouldn't say in front of your boss.
You are the adult. You have to set the boundaries.
You are my professional teacher. You are my role model.
I first of all want to thank everyone for taking part in this Code of Ethics training presentation. Second, I'd like to thank all of the educators and administrators for their continued service in helping our students. And finally, I would like to welcome all the new educators that are entering this rewarding profession. Now, it's time for class. If you were principal for the day, what are 3 virtues that you would want your teachers to have?
If I was principal for a day, I would want my teachers to be respectful and mindful with the things their students are going through. I would like them to be very positive because, like I said recently, their actions are going to transmit to their students.
I would like them to always have a smile on their face when they walk in the door. I would like them to be professional and not act childish. Sometimes be stern when they need to be stern, but not always mad for the whole day.
If I were principal for a day, 3 virtues that I would want my teachers to have. First would be patience. Patience with students and with fellow teachers, all to increase the effectiveness of the learning environment. Another virtue that I would want my teachers to have would be active listening, being able to communicate with students and be able to learn from them as they're providing the educational material, and also flexibility, because we're all human.
I would want my teachers to have I want them to be able to be kind, but I want them to be strict, so that way students aren't out of hand. And I would like them to be come in early enough to where everybody's not waiting in line so long, waiting to eat their breakfast. The teacher just running late.
Is it important for a student to trust their teacher?
It's important to have trust in your teachers because teachers are there to help you with from personal problems to even math or science help. Also, teachers are like the police officers of the classroom. If anything ever happens, teachers are always going to be there to help you, and they put themselves last, and you guys alone first. That's what happens whenever you put your trust in teachers.
I believe it's important for a student to trust a teacher because, in my personal perspective, when I'm not comfortable or if I don't trust a teacher, it's hard for me to ask questions.
The Code of Ethics for Arkansas Educators defines the minimum standards for professional, ethical conduct for all educators. The Arkansas Department of Education's rules governing the Code of Ethics for Arkansas Educators define these standards and provide a process to investigate alleged violations. Under Act 564, non-licensed educators are subject to the Code of Ethics standards. The updated rules governing the Code of Ethics for Arkansas Educators add sanctions for those educators. Pre-service teachers are bound by the Code of Ethics pursuant to Arkansas Code annotated 617-428 as amended by Act 1090 of 2015. Standard 2 and Standard 8's language has been updated. Standard 2 includes professional and ethical behavior as part of competency. Standard 8 is revised to include e-cigarettes and similar products and a provision for impairment due to the abuse or misuse of prescription medication or other authorized substances. Fines for ethical violations are increased up to $500 under Act 564. Look for the updated rules governing the Code of Ethics for Arkansas educators to be posted soon on the ADE website. How do you apply the Code of Ethics standards in your school district?
We apply the Code of Ethics standards in our school by ensuring that our staff is professionally developed. We want to make sure that they know how and where to access the Code of Ethics standards. We want to make sure that they understand them and that they model professional behavior when dealing with students, parents, and stakeholders in the community.
The most important thing an educator should know about the Code of Ethics standards is that they are very important. It's not something that, as a profession, that we should take lightly. I know from my experience serving on the Professional Licensure Standards Board when it first started, I, quite frankly, was appalled at some of the things that were occurring in our profession. But I was also very encouraged that as a state, we were taking a stand and saying, when you are an educator, there are expectations of you, and they're high expectations. And so to me, making sure, I'll occasionally hear someone make light of the standards, joke. I stop that, because it is very important that you understand these standards help make us professional. And if we want to be looked at as professionals, we want to be respected as professionals. Thus, we should be governed by standards and ethics.
Everybody's got a specific role that they have to play, and the Code of Ethics is just such an important part of everything that we do, the way that we interact with everyone in our building. So it's really important to make sure that when we are teaching or when we're doing duty in the morning or at lunch, that we always have that Code of Ethics in the back of our mind, making sure that the things that we say, our actions, the way that we interact with everybody is just we're staying true to that, to those standards.
The Arkansas Code of Ethics standards have equal importance. All 8 ethical standards are important for teachers to not only be aware about, but to also keep in mind when we have interaction with students in the classroom, and even at times when we're off campus. I'm going to tell you one thing that's probably obvious to everybody, and that's that teachers are under a microscope. And that's going to be the case for a lifetime. That's going to be the case forever. We should be under a microscope. We're talking about children, their care, their education, their integrity, their livelihood. It all rests upon our shoulders. And so it is important for us to keep in mind all of the ethical standards when we're at school.
Districts can utilize the Code of Ethics standards as a tool and enhance their district to be more professional. The Code of Ethics is a reminder of the boundaries in which all educators must be cognizant of and not cross. Culturally responsive teaching involves valuing a student's culture and experiences and applying them to everyday instruction. Being culturally responsive is getting to know all of your students in order to create a daily inclusive environment so that students are inspired to share their culture, share their language as it relates to instruction, and most of all, feel respected as a viable person or student in your class. When educators exhibit a cultural disconnect towards minority students, it often leads students to experience poor self-esteem, exhibit discipline problems, and to underachieve academically. Educators unfamiliar with students' diverse backgrounds may misinterpret cultural differences as a misbehavior. As a result, an educator's disposition may change towards a student. The educator may act out of anger towards the student and/or class, thus compromising their professionalism. At that point, the educator's behavior could result in potential ethics violations. A student's ability to learn best is an environment where their identities are valued.
Especially in bigger districts, you're going to have people from diverse populations, and even just speaking from the perspective of African American versus Caucasian. I mean, you've got to understand cultural differences, and they're so important for you not only to understand those differences, but to be culturally aware and culturally sensitive to those things, because that can affect how you build a relationship with those students, how you maintain a relationship with those students, and also their families. And a lot of the times if you are aware of those cultural differences and you're respectful of those things and you make an effort to even learn from people who are different from you, it goes so far in being able to build relationships with students and teachers, and it just gives a very positive vibe from you as a professional and as an individual. It says a lot about who you are. So really important to be culturally aware and culturally sensitive, which especially I think in this area a lot of the time in the South, growing up here, it's something that we have to talk a lot more about, and I think that's something that's important too, is being open to just having conversations and being able to ask hard questions, and we can still do that and we can disagree, but we can be respectful about it, and just being open-minded and willing to learn about cultures and people who are different from you.
Now that we've discussed why ethics are important to maintain your professionalism, the next segment will discuss and examine the 8 standards of the Code of Ethics for Arkansas educators.
Standard 1. An educator maintains a professional relationship with each student, both in and outside of the classroom.
What are the adverse effects of a teacher not maintaining a professional relationship with students?
A professional relationship between a teacher and a student should be one based on respect both ways. A teacher should be able to understand a student's struggles, and a student should always keep in mind the authority a teacher has over them and respect them.
Not maintaining a professional relationship with students adversely affects the learning culture in the classroom. It is very difficult, if not impossible, for a student to take a teacher seriously, a teacher who is not abiding by the Code of Ethics. I worry about students in a classroom where the code is not being applied.
When teachers don't maintain professional relationships with students, they lose credibility. They lose the students' respect, and students feel that they can behave in ways that they shouldn't. And that means that the teacher also loses effective instruction time. You're not able to provide effective instruction if you can't maintain a professional relationship and students have the respect that they should have for you.
When we're talking about the relationship that teachers have with students, it's important for us to keep in mind that we should be a teacher first to a student and a friend second to a student. I think we're less likely to encounter any type of long-term problems with students if they feel like we're being consistent in the classroom, that all of the rules, all of the procedures, all of the consistency, all of the feedback is given to every student in the same measure.
A relationship between a teacher and a student should be that of an educational focus, but with an emphasis on mentorship and increasing both in knowledge and education, but also as the person for the student.
Last year, there were 67 authorized investigations for potential Standard 1 violations. 30 of those cases involved classroom teachers, and 23 involved coaches. Standard 2. An educator maintains competence regarding his or her professional practice, inclusive of professional and ethical behavior, skills, knowledge, dispositions, and responsibilities relating to his or her organizational position.
Why is a teacher's disposition so important?
I think as your team, I think your team takes on the disposition that you portray, that you set that example. I think if I'm real aggressive and all the time, and if I'm getting on officials all the time, and I'm yelling at players all the time, that it bleeds off, and that team takes on your personality. And not to mean that there's not times that you have to raise your voice, you gotta get someone's attention, because every kid's different. How you reach that kid to motivate them and to get them to reach their full potential is different than other kids. And some kids don't like you to speak loud to them. Some kids won't react until you speak loud to them. And but I think your disposition, your personality, how you go about things, if you're calm, if you're not calm, that really bleeds over into the personality of your team. And it could be the same way in the classroom. I think if you're real aggressive in the classroom and do the same way, your class is will mold that same way. And so I think that it's very important how the disposition you have and how you handle that yourself, because it really, your team acts the same way.
Oh, an administrator's disposition is critically important to the school and even at the classroom level. My disposition as a principal impacts the overall culture in the building. It's very important. I tell young administrators, you're on call 24/7. We are being scrutinized, we're being watched, as we should be. Educators should realize once you sign that contract and you say, I am a professional educator, that means your life is really not totally your own. Because we have a job to do and we have lives that we're impacting. So that administrators' disposition is vitally important.
It is important for teachers to have a proper attitude because when they come to the classroom, students, some are ready to learn, and if the teacher is not ready to be teaching and with a positive attitude, the students might not have the best attitude either.
The proper attitude for a teacher is necessary to the learning environment for a student. If a teacher enters the classroom with the wrong attitude, then that can affect everything from the student's ability and desire to learn, from the teacher's ability to be able to teach the material to the student.
Sometimes if those kids come to school, you are the only smiling and joyful face that they see. So making sure that that's what they get from you, because sometimes that could be the only positive influence or the positive thing that they see in their day.
The disposition of a teacher is very important because it has that trickle-down effect to students. I don't think you can lie to a student. They know just about any type of emotional charge that's taking place within their teacher in the classroom. They can look at us and just sense if happiness is there. They can look at us and sense if anger is there. They can look at us and sense if nervousness is there or frustration, any type of emotional charge. Children are real quick to pick up on and sense that in a teacher. We've got to make sure that once we get to school that day, once we enter that classroom, that we've got a very professional image, that we've got a constant image, one that students are familiar with seeing on a daily basis and they're expecting it from us, because it will trickle down to the students.
Back when I played, which was it was a long time ago, but it was the coach's way and no other way. The coach come in and was demanding, and he could grab you any way to do to get your attention. And today's different. The society's different, community's different, the kids are different, and that's something that as coaches and teachers we have to learn to adapt to. Is, like I said earlier, is every kid's different and they're not like they used to be. And I think it's very important that as a coach, I've got to figure out what buttons to push on every kid, on what motivates them, what keeps them engaged, what keeps them locked in, the best, that they can become the best player they can be, and I can be the best coach I can be with them, which makes our team the best we can be.
Why do you think cursing is a violation of the Code of Ethics?
I remember I used to, especially when I was younger and coached in middle school, and I would catch a young man cursing, I would say, all you're doing is portraying that you're not smart enough to use a word to express what you're trying to say. If a player on the floor can get a technical for cursing, but I curse on the sideline, I don't see how that player can, tell the difference on when it's right and when it's wrong. If it's wrong on the floor for them to do it, it'd be wrong for me to be able to do it on the sideline.
In the 2017-2018 school year, there were 109 authorized investigations for potential Standard 2 violations. 49 of those cases involved classroom teachers, while 22 involved coaches. Standard 3. An educator honestly fulfills reporting obligations associated with professional practices.
What is your role as a mandated reporter?
As a mandated reporter, my role is to ensure the safety of students. I am to ensure that teachers understand that if they have the slightest indication that a student is in harm's way or in danger or their needs are not being met, they are to report that immediately. They need to have access to the hotline. They need to know the procedures for calling in reports, and our number one goal is to maintain student safety.
Always to be mindful, always to be watching for things, because we do have an obligation if there's something that is wrong, or we notice that if there's physical evidence that we see of abuse or neglect, or other things that we see that kind of throw up those red flags for us. We've always got to be on our toes, making sure that we're communicating with maybe other teachers so that they are aware of the situation, but certainly your first duty is to make sure that you report that, because by law, we are obligated to do so.
Of the 17 authorized investigations of potential Standard 3 violations in the 2017-2018 school year, nearly 50% involved administrators. Standard 4. An educator entrusted with public funds and property, including school-sponsored activity funds, honors that trust with honest, responsible stewardship.
What does entrusted with public funds and property mean to you?
Being entrusted with public funds and property means that as educators, we are to be good stewards of what we have. We are to make sure that our funding is spent for what it's intended for. We are to make sure that our students have the opportunities and experiences that they're supposed to have in their educational experience. We're to make sure that we maintain the facilities and take care of them and keep our students safe and make our communities proud.
Maintaining the trust of our community, staff, regarding the proper stewardship of finances, for example, property, is important, because taxpayers, they're the ones that are paying for what we have. It's important that we don't abuse what we have. And some of the safeguards, for example, at a high school level, especially high school such as Russellville High School, we have a lot of clubs and activities, a lot of money fundraisers. We have to have safeguards in place. Who handles the money? How is the money, how is it put into the central office level? Who signs? I sign every single receipt that comes through, indicating, and when I put my signature on that, I know what this purchase was for, and I know that it was a legitimate expenditure.
In the 2017-2018 school year, there were 13 authorized investigations of potential violations of Standard 4. 6 of those investigations involved administrators, while 4 involved classroom teachers. Standard 5. An educator maintains integrity regarding the acceptance of any gratuity, gift, compensation, or favor that might impair or appear to influence professional decisions or actions, and shall refrain from using the educator's position for personal gain.
As a teacher, you get a lot of gifts. More so in elementary from my experience. Now that I'm in the middle school, I still get some gifts, and I get things like they'll bring like a flower or two in, or they bring a card, or maybe a gift certificate for like Chick-fil-A, or some of those restaurants where you can go and grab some lunch. Sometimes they bring you coffee, and certainly those things are okay, but you've got to be really careful with those over-the-top gifts. If people are offering you like season tickets for baseball games or basketball games, or they're like, we got you an appliance, here you go, thanks for being our teacher. Obviously those things are not okay, and so you've got to use your best judgment. That students are especially, they love you, they want to give you things, but those over-the-top gifts are inappropriate, and you've got to draw the line with those.
Last year, there were 5 authorized investigations of potential Standard 5 violations. Standard 6. An educator keeps in confidence secure standardized test materials and results and maintains integrity regarding test administration procedures.
What are best practices for test administration procedures?
I am a former district test coordinator. That role is also a very important role in the school district. You have to have, we had a room where nobody had a key to that room except for me and the superintendent, because that's where all of the secure test materials were at the district level. At the building level, the same thing applies. You have a room that is just for testing, and the file cabinets and so forth can be locked. There has to be a very strong check-in, check-out system. The training that district level test coordinators and building level test coordinators, the training that is provided, it's very important that that's documented. Even to the point of, what PowerPoints did you use? And there are signatures. I received this training. I know what's expected of me. I know what I can and cannot do. Those things are very important.
In the 2017-2018 school year, there were 6 authorized investigations of potential Standard 6 violations. Standard 7. An educator maintains the confidentiality of information about students and colleagues obtained in the course of the educator's professional services that is protected under state law or regulations, federal law or regulations, or the written policies of the educator's school district, unless disclosure serves a professional purpose as allowed or required by law or regulations.
Educators have access to a lot of student information. Explain what measures you take to secure this information.
We have a tendency to take our work home with us, and I think that's something you've got to be really careful with because, a lot of times when we're, especially speaking in terms of folders or, reports for special services and things like that, there's a lot of, there can be medical information in there, and so, you don't want people that are not directly involved with that student having access to those things. And just also making sure, even in your classroom, that you don't ever have things just laying, on a desk, because especially in middle school, kids like to, I can look around her desk and snoop around. And so, that information's out there, and you want to protect the integrity of each student and make sure that, that you're not sharing those things, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. You've got to be really careful, and it's just protecting the best interest of the student and protecting them.
During the 2017-18 school year, there were 8 authorized investigations of potential Standard 7 violations. Standard 8. An educator, while on school premises or at school-sponsored activities involving students, refrains from using and/or possessing and/or being under the influence of alcohol or unauthorized drugs and/or substances, and/or possessing items prohibited by law, or possessing or using tobacco or tobacco-related products, e-cigarettes, or vapor products, or abusing and/or misusing prescription medications or other authorized substances, as evidenced by impairment while on school premises or at school-sponsored activities involving students. During the 2017-2018 school year, there were 12 authorized investigations of potential Standard 8 violations.
Increasingly, educators are utilizing social networking technology tools for professional educational purposes. The Professional Licensure Standards Board offers the cautionary guidelines to assist educators in ensuring that their usage of these tools is consistent with the spirit and intent of the Code of Ethics for Arkansas educators.
The proper use of social media is very important for educators. It's something that even when we have our interns come in from the college level who are going to be interning in the classrooms, we emphasize how important it is that that they realize that social media is a reflection of them, and if you're in a school system, it's a reflection of the school system. Sometimes, they'll look at me kind of funny, like, what do you mean it's a reflection of the school system? Well, you represent, if you're at Russellville High School, you represent Russellville High School. And so social media, what is put on there, even what you like, if you click like on certain things, that speaks about who you are. And so I caution the teachers about not friending students, being very selective about what you put out on social media. Stay away from, for example, even like political rants that can cause a lot of division, because our role as educators is so important for us to be true role models. And social media can have a very adverse effect on whether or not you're looked at as a true role model.
I do not believe that it's appropriate for teachers and students to communicate via social media, because there's a line that teachers and students should have, and it's better not to cross that line.
When using social media, educators again have to remember that they are role models. They are upstanding citizens in the community, and they have to behave as such. You should never do anything that would cause someone else to fall. And that means that you should always make sure that you are walking a walk that sheds a positive light on yourself and on the institution that you represent.
Teachers should absolutely use social media to communicate, but to a certain extent, apps such as Remind 101 and Google Classroom, those types of media apps are very valuable in allowing students to feel comfortable and and receive the information.
Communication with students should always be professional. I should not be texting a student. Educators should not be texting a student. We have cautioned our teachers, we use Remind 101. So for example, the band director, if he needs to send out communication to the band students, he uses Remind 101. I'm a part of that Remind 101, so I see that information that goes out. As I said earlier, not friending students on your personal Facebook page or Twitter account. We caution our teachers to have professional accounts through the school, and they can get information to students in that way, nothing personal.
It isn't uncommon for us to see that 10, 11, and 12-year-olds have a Facebook account or an Instagram account. And that's the way that a lot of communication is done today. However, the advice I would give to young educators and just educators in general in terms of using social media is to not have a direct link with students, whether it be in Facebook or Twitter. I think it's safe to just limit your interaction with your students to the classroom or to school-related events or just to those ever so often encounters that we might have with students and parents of students out in the community. I try not to ever, have a student as a friend of mine on Facebook. I won't add a parent as a friend of mine, and if any parent or student tries to add me on Facebook or any type of social media outlet, I decline it, but I do so in a very respectful and polite manner. I try to make sure that I let the parent and the student know, listen, just for our benefit, for our safety, for the integrity of the academic and social progression that I'm trying to provide to you and or your child, it's probably better that we don't have this connection on social media right now.
Assistant principals, any administrator in our district, I would encourage for them to become part of whatever the system that's being used. And the example that I gave was Remind 101. So I joined the Remind 101 that the band director has and that other teachers in our system use, so that when a message goes out, I see the message. I think it's very important that we be aware as administrators what messages our teachers are sending out. I think that can be a very good safeguard to put in place.
Anyone can fill out an allegation of violation form. Allegations are filed under penalty of perjury. All allegations must be mailed to the address listed on the form with an original signature. Penalties and fines may include a letter of caution, a written reprimand accompanied with a fine, probation accompanied with a fine, suspension accompanied with a fine, or revocation. With the exception of a letter of caution, all recommendations by the Professional Licensure Standards Board's Ethics Subcommittee can be accompanied with a fine and any training with all costs being paid by the educator. For the 2017-2018 school year, the average age of educators under investigation by the Professional Licensure Standards Board was 44. Last year, 25 of the 67 authorized investigations under Standard 1 concerned sexual dialogue, grooming, and/or sexual contact. A majority of those cases, 18, involved teachers and coaches. These 25 investigations represented 22% of all the cases authorized for investigation during the 2017-2018 year. Any violation of the Code of Ethics for Arkansas educators is a serious matter. During the 2017-2018 school year, there were 33,228 teachers in Arkansas. For the same year, PLSB authorized 115 cases for investigation. This means that less than 1% of Arkansas teachers were involved in a Code of Ethics violation investigation.
Districts should utilize the Code of Ethics standards as a tool to enhance their educators to be more professional. As an educator, your professionalism is not optional. You have to own it every day. Now that everyone's had a chance to listen and review the 8 standards, I hope this information will reinforce all of your commitment to professionalism and most of all, our students. Parents, your school district, and your communities hold you, teachers, to a higher standard. With this prodigious responsibility comes your 8 standards. When you have people's children in your care, they have certain expectations, and these 8 standards provide the ethical compass to navigate through the ethical decisions you make each and every day.
You're my professional teacher. You're my role model.
You are 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 my professional teacher. You are my role model.